The instinct when you see your child's motivation drop is to get more involved, more coaching, more feedback, more correction on the drive home. That instinct makes sense. It's also the most consistent pattern I've seen that drains it further. Not the club, not the coach, but the feedback loop between the training session and your front door. Everything I'm about to describe, I've done some version of myself. And it comes from the right place. It comes from caring about the kids. It comes from wanting to give them every advantage. And the problem isn't the intention. The problem is the effect it has. The coaching instinct shows up in three specific patterns, and each one attacks a different root of your child's motivation to play. I'll touch on all three because most parents are doing at least one of them without knowing it. There's a free tool at the end that builds the kind of environment that does the opposite of these. I'll link to it below as well. The first pattern is the most common and perhaps the hardest to recognize as a problem because everything in the left column here is well intentioned. You played well today, you scored, you had a great game. Completely understandable things to say to your child after a match. Warm, encouraging, things you want your child to hear. But what your child might learn underneath this over time is that your attention and, at some level, their worth in your eyes is connected to results. A bad result can become a threat. Challenge, where failure is likely, becomes something to avoid. The player who avoids challenge is the player who stops developing, and eventually, the player who stops wanting to be there. The fix to this isn't to stop offering praise, it's to redirect what the praise points at. One sentence about what you noticed in the process, not about the outcome. The specific words are less important than the direction. Away from the outcome toward effort or problem solving. That's the signal that changes what your child hears. The second pattern looks like investment. Parents who can afford a full schedule see it that way because, in some ways, it is. The question is what it is investing in. When every hour is scheduled, there is no space left for your child to play for its own sake. Not structured play, not coached play. Play that your child chooses, organizes, and runs without adult supervision. That is where intrinsic motivation actually lives. Not in the structure, but outside of it. The research on what sustains long-term athletic motivation consistently identifies autonomy, the sense of being in control of what you're doing, as one of its three foundations. A fully scheduled week has no autonomy in it. None of the hours belong to your child. One more point from my physio point of view, because I think it's important to realize that the investment pattern that removes autonomy is often the same pattern that I see before a burnout injury. They often arrive together. The child who stopped asking to go to training and the child with recurring soft tissue problems are often the same kids, 12 months apart. The schedule that removed autonomy is also the schedule that overload a load capacity bucket, and it's the same cause with two different symptoms. The fix is simple once you understand the mechanism. Autonomy requires unscheduled time, not less commitment to development, but less structured design of every single hour. Take a look at the week honestly. Is there any time in it that belongs to your child, not to a program? If the answer is no, that's the information you need to act on. The research on long-term motivation shows that voluntary Child-led engagement is the environment where intrinsic motivation is maintained. The schedule is worth reading as a document about autonomy, not just as a document about load. I have done this. Standing on a touchline as a coach, watching a child I care about go through a bad stretch in a game, not managing to keep it off my face fully. And nobody does this on purpose. It could be a wince, a sharp exhale, a change in body language after a bad passage of play. These are not conscious decisions. They're more like involuntary responses to watching your child under pressure. They're also completely normal. And the research on parental sideline behaviour shows that a child who monitors their parents' reactions after a mistake is a child whose game is starting to drift away from them. While you're watching, your child is watching you back. Not all the time, and not consciously most of it, but their peripheral attention is on you throughout the game. Your reaction to their mistakes becomes part of what the game is telling them. Over time, it shapes their behavior as well. When your anxiety is visible, your child adjusts their behavior to reduce it, not to play better. They go safe when they should go risky. They pull out of challenges that might go wrong. Gradually, the game stops being theirs. It becomes a performance for your emotional state. How to read this in your own child? Watch whether they look at you after a mistake. The tell can be the eye dart after an error, before they've even read what happened next in the game. If they look at you first and the ball second, that might be part of the pattern. This pattern doesn't have a game design solution. The fix is in what you don't say, not what you do. The direction is clear enough though. Less post-match feedback. The more you say after the final whistle, the less the game belongs to them during it. The specific words depend on your child and your dynamic. But the principle stands on its own. The research on long-term motivation in athletes identifies 3 routes: feeling capable, feeling in control of what you're doing, and feeling that the activity is connected to something that matters to you. Each of these 3 patterns sort of attacks one of these directly. Outcome praise creates a threat to capability. A bad result signals inadequacy, not just a bad day. Overscheduling removes autonomy. The hours stop belonging to your child. The visible sideline anxiety disconnects the game from your child's own experience of it, and it becomes about managing your reaction, not about playing. The kids who still love the game at 22 are almost always the ones whose enjoyment was protected during the 9 to 14 window, not by removing the challenge, but by ensuring the game remains theirs. Dropout at 13 or 14 isn't necessarily a talent problem. It's more likely to be a motivation problem, and it's almost always preceded by a period of these patterns from people who care deeply. The investment that lasts isn't the $7,000 season, it's the Tuesday evening where you step back. Every one of these patterns has the same root cause. The instinct to be involved is pulling the game away from your child. The fix isn't to care less, it's to give them the game back. The first 2 of these patterns have a session design solution, and the last one doesn't. The free tool below handles the design piece. Your child can run it on their own. For the full picture, including the third pattern, you can apply to work with me below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.